Alright guys, I got my Laxus to 6-star with his second origin, Ether Nano passive all unlocked. So in today's video, I'm going to bring a build guide on how I think is the best way to build up Laxus. Now build guide is something I want to do for quite a while, for a lot of characters actually. The only problem is that I kind of wanted to wait for the character to be completely maxed out, so have the second origin, all of the passive, etc. And that's kind of why it's taken me a long time to get it. Laxus is the first character that I'm going to do, surprisingly. So that's kind of why I'm starting off with Laxus. The next one I'm going to do is probably going to be Nasu, but he's still going to be another at least 3 or 4 weeks away because I still need quite a lot of shards for him to unlock it. In case we are wondering why I have an SSR unlocked with second origin before a low rarity characters, it's just simply because I don't like wasting stamina to farm shards or buy them in the shop because I know eventually once I get him maxed out of those shards, I'll kind of just waste it. And I think you can exchange them, but the exchange rate is not very good, so it's just kind of like wasted resource, which is why I just kind of getting them naturally as I summon for other characters. Unlike like a featured character like Laxus, even though he's SSR, I can dedicate all of my summon and diamonds onto him, so that's why I'm able to do it. For background context, it took me 1,000 summons to get him. Still, it's a free to play, so you see it's actually very much feasible to get an SSR to second origin completely maxed out, even if you're free to play, as long as you only concentrate on one character at a time. And that's the case with me on Laxus. I've done a few summons on Jalo just to get him to 4-star, but you can see all of the other characters like Leo, Evergreen, Jose, Angel, all of them are stuck at 3-star because Midnight as well, right? They're all 3-star because I didn't summon on them at all, just getting the free copy, etc. So if you concentrate all of your resources on just one single SSR, then you will be able to get it in like about 1,000 summons like me. In terms of the rates, I think I have fairly average luck as well. I think most people would be able to get it if you do 1,000 summons, as long as you split it into 2 chunks of 500. And the reason is obviously for the free copies that you get when you do 500 summons. Just to put things in perspective, by the way, the pity is 70 summons. In reality, most of the time, I think you get it in the last 20 pulls. So I would say the average time normally to get one SSR is more like 60 pulls, 60 summons for one SSR. It's a 50-50 chance for you to get it. So even if you lose the 50-50 the first time, then you're guaranteed the second time. So on average, you probably need to multiply that by another 1.5. So I would say, to get one SSR, you need on average 60 summons to get the SSR that you actually want. So for example, for me, to actually get Laxus, it takes about just over 90 summons to get him. So if you're actually doing 1,000 pulls, right? Then you would essentially be able to, if you take 90 summons per copy, if you're doing 1,000 pulls, then you'd be able to get 11 copies. Then plus the 4 copies that you'll be able to get. So remember, you get 2 when you reach 500. If you do this twice, that's 4 copies. So in total, you'll be able to get to 15 copies, which is actually exactly the number you need to get a character all the way to unlock his second origin, because it takes 2 copies. So you start off with 1 free copy from the event, then you get 2 copies to get to 4-star, 3 copies to 5-star, 6 copies to 6-star, and then another 4 copies to unlock his second origin. So in total, that's 15 copies. So which is exactly what you are expected to see if you summon 1,000 times on the banner. So that's kind of why I actually think the game kind of calculated that way as well. So as long as you have average luck, you should be able to do it in 1,000, and that's how I managed to get Laxus, even though I'm completely free to play. So, alright, that's enough background context. Now, in terms of Laxus itself, I'm going to go through his gears, so in terms of the stats you want, his energy circle, his heaven stone, and also his magic device, etc. So you know exactly how you want to build him. First question though, that I'm going to answer is that, is it important for you to get him to second origin? Yes, absolutely. I think Laxus is definitely one of the top 3 characters in the game, in my opinion. So definitely very much worth it to get a second origin. And once you have second origin, you get a bunch of other additional benefits, which are all pretty nice. The first one, you are immune to additional control effect, so that's very nice, especially when you are facing up against an enemy with like multiple control skill like Juvia, Hot Tie, Leon, etc. Right? It's very nice that you actually have two attacks which also immune you to controls because they will have multiple control attacks. So that's very nice. The second one, this one is more for PvE or boss battles, because you won't be able to trigger this the first time you use skill 4, because if you actually play on auto, he's going to use skill 4 first before he gets Thunder Powder. So this is more for boss fight or for PvE, but it's still nice. It does give you quite a bit of a damage boost if you're actually able to do it. And also this increased crit hit is actually quite important, which I'm going to talk about later in terms of the best stats you want for Laxus as well. And then last one, this one's super important. Increase the damage output by 50%. This is massive. This allows you to almost like one-shot anyone with a skill 4, and also extend the duration of invisibility to 2.5 seconds. This is also massive because then in total you already have like 1.2 second damage immunity, so that in total is like almost 4 seconds, which is very important considering he's a glass cannon. So the longer duration of immunity, then the better off you are getting because your defense is already really low. Every second you take could be a huge amount of damage. So having that is really, really nice. And also, this is also same as damage control, and that also allow you to bypass some really, really long duration controls. For example, Jalal in prison have really long control effect. Even if you start off able to dodge it, as soon as the control is gone, you will then be able to be imprisoned by Jalal because his imprison effect is still active for a really long time, even after your initial invincibility state. But if you actually have this Raging Thunder, you kind of just bypass that completely because even if his imprison is still on the field, you will still be immune to that control. So that's kind of very nice. It's very important for you to get Luxus to second origin, in my opinion. Now, in terms of let's start off with his Heavenstone, because I think this is the biggest secret for Luxus, and I think something a lot of people don't realize. Now, in general, you want to go for hard hitting ones. So, for example, if I pick um, some of the skills, what you can pick is you have the likes of I'm just trying to figure out some good one. So basically, you just want to go for the ones that increase its attack. So you can do ones which, for example, when you hit an enemy, then they take more damage. Or you can do the ones, for example, like this one, reduce the defense. You can also go for some burn damage. This is physical. Ideally, you want a magical one for him. You can also go for something like which one? This one's also quite nice. You reduce your own HP, but you increase your damage output by massively, by 27%, which is massive. Considering the Luxus is already a glass cannon, losing HP is not the worst thing in his world. Yeah, losing HP for him is not that bad, but instead you're getting 27% increase in damage. That's massive considering his attack output, so that's very nice. You can also do a few which is based on HP threshold. Generally, I don't recommend it because he's a glass cannon, so he does go down quite quickly. So it's very easy for you to either get below the HP threshold or be above the HP threshold for only a very short time. So basically anything which is a HP above a certain amount, that's really useless. And then for the ones which is a HP below, if he's already at 30% HP, he's going to die pretty quickly. So those ones I don't typically recommend. I kind of prefer the straight up attack when your skills hit, that kind of things. This one's okay, increasing attack about 25% for 20 seconds. Because he's a glass cannon, you kind of want to make sure you are getting the most out of him while he's alive. And to be honest, 20 seconds is normally roughly how long he's going to be on the field. So that I think is quite good as well. So those are all the good options. But there's one I think is by far the most important, and a lot of people don't know about it, and that's going to be Frost. This one's not attacking damage, but this one's basically reducing the enemy movement speed. And this, to me, is if you have to pick one skill out of everything, this is the one you want to pick. And the reason being is that if you play Luxus, you will probably know his skill 4, the hardest hitting move, tend to miss a lot. And that's because what's going to happen is he's literally just going to stand there for like 2 or 3 seconds charging up. And while he's charging up, the enemy will be moving past him. And so when your attack actually lands, very likely the enemy is no longer going to be in the range anymore. And that's going to be extremely annoying. It does say he pulls the enemy within a large range towards the center of the field, but that pulling effect is pretty weak, I have to say. So this is kind of the reason why sometimes people think Lux is a bit of a hit or miss, depending on whether his skillful can actually connect. And this is where the beauty of this Heavenstone really comes in when he has this frost. Because what happens is when he's charging up, he's actually going to damage the enemy at the same time, and you are actually going to trigger your frost effect. So this way, your enemies are actually going to slow down as they try to move out of your attack, and it makes your skillful much more likely to land. And this is absolutely amazing. Let me just show you stage just to show you this is actually true. So if you actually go into the battle, if you take a look at the feet on the enemies, what you see they're completely, there's nothing around them, right? Because they're not under any debuff. If I use my skill 4, you can see there's already like black smoke around them or gray smoke around them before my attack even lands. Let me try this again. And that is basically when the frost is taking effect, the enemies have been slowed down. So you can see before my energy ball even hit the ground, they are already been slowed down, which is very nice. So you can see this gray smoke, right? They've been slowed down, and this is very important. And that's why I think frost is like the by far the one essential skill you need to make sure your skillful land a lot more consistent. And that's going to be a massive game changer for Luxor, especially considering his Ethan and the passive increase that attack by 50%. So this is really the one attack you can't miss. And having Frost is going to be a massive game changer for you. And obviously, for the same rationale, as you can see, before that energy ball even hit the ground, the enemy is already taking attack. So when you have any debuff on your Heavenstone, which is like armor break, for example, when you hit an enemy, reduce their defense, those are going to take effect as well before your energy ball actually lands on them. So this is why this is actually really good in my opinion. As for the other Heavenstone, this one I just kept it because it's a red one, so it's quite rare. Eventually, I will swap it onto a different character once I have another red Heavenstone. But this one is basically just a burn, but it's a physical burn, which you may think like, Lux as a magical union, this is going to be completely useless. The reality is not. Even though all of Lux's attack skill on magic, all of the characters in this game actually start off with equal amount of physical and magical attack. So even though he's a magical unit, all of his attack are magical base, and that's why you want to build him magical. But this is still going to hurt, to be honest. This will still hurt because his natural physical attack is still pretty high. I would much rather, and also like I said, I kept this because it's a red one, so you have the highest scaling. I would rather much have 25% scaling on my physical attack than let's say a 10% scaling on my magical attack, because 25% of physical is still going to be much higher than 10% of magical, even though magical is naturally high. So that's kind of why I still kept it. Heal I need to eventually recast that way. I just don't have enough resources. But yeah, so that's kind of my build on Laxus. If it's up to me, if I have the free will to choose everything, I'll probably go for Frost, Armor Break, then I'll probably go for what's the other one I want? If it's completely up to me, I'll probably go for price. I think that's quite important. Then I might also go for I might go for the magical burn, maybe. But then there's also the other one where you hit the enemy. This one's also quite nice. Feint. Once again, gonna increase your skill 4 to very high amounts before the energy ball even land on them. And then the other good choice, like I said, is raid, where you was it raid? No, raid, where you start off the battle with 20% extra attack. I think some combination of those 5 or 6 is gonna be able to allow you to one shot with your skill 4, and that's gonna be massive in any kind of content. So that's really what I really want to strongly recommend in terms of the Heavenstone skills. Now, in terms of the gears, when you refine them, in order to just go for as much attack base as you can. So, for example, magical attack, light attack, penetration, crit rate, crit damage, any of them would do. Once again, I kept some of those, even though they're not relevant. For example, this one is a dark attack, absolutely useless. But I still kept them because they're quite rare. They are all red. level of enhancement or refinement, so that's why I kept it. It increased my CC, but eventually I'll just transfer away. But it was very useful for me recently as I try to rank high in the wizard ranking event for Laxus. In fact, let me show you. I was quite pleased with this considering I'm free to play as well. So if you actually take a look at that, I'm actually second now. My BP is 851. K BP, which is very high, so that's kind of why I'm second. And also in the ranking event that just I finished, I was able to get third. It was a very close battle between 2, 3, and 4s, to be honest. We're all around 850k. It's all like the last few digits determines who has the high amount. But yeah, I was able to get quite high, and that's all with a red magic gear as well, by the way. Whereas if you actually take a look at other people, they all have like this magic gear was like 3 or 4 levels leveled up, this brilliant magic gear. Whereas my one, I will show you, I am only using red magic gear. So my magic gear is a lot worse than theirs, but I'm able to make up for that BP difference by having higher level. I think that helps as well, and also just on some of the refinement on my ones, because even though they're not useful in actual combat, they do push up your BP by quite a lot. So those are nice things for you to bear in mind, and because they're so rare, it's much better for you to keep them and then just eventually transfer away. For example, this one's like dark and light, so I said that could be quite good for Jalo if I decide to build Jalo up next. So those are all the things you want to bear in mind. But if you do have that free choice of choosing any stats, then try to go for the attacking focus one, like magic attack, light attack, crit damage, penetration, etc. Okay, in terms of the energy zone, it's the same thing. You want to go for that. You also do want to keep one of each color so that you have this extra 4% bonus. It doesn't sound like much, but because it's a versatile unit, you'd have this on pretty much all of the other units as long as they're not versatile as well. So even though it's only 4%, this is actually can be applied to pretty much everyone. So that's why it's still very good for you to get the right color combination. And once again, if you do have multiple choices, try to focus on the more offensive ones rather than defensive. Something you have to bear in mind is that because Laxus always have this invincibility and also his damage reduction built in, for every defense stats you invest in, they won't be active all the time. Because, for example, if you're already immune to damage, then those stats are kind of wasted during that time period. Whereas attacking stats, you're always going to make the most out of them. Especially consider his scaling is like one of the highest in the game. You are going to make a lot out of those higher attack stats. So that's something you definitely want to do. Once again, I'll show you for comparison purposes. For example, Luxus skill 4 is 351% scaling. Then if we compare to Natsu, who have also one of the highest attacks in the game, this is only 275% scaling. So you can see Luxus is still doing a lot more damage, and that's kind of why you really want to take advantage of those high attack stats. So that's his energy stones. Then in terms of magic gear, okay, like I said, I only put red magic gear because I don't have the one I want for in terms of brilliant magic gear. But my red magic gear is actually quite nice in terms of light and magic attack. So once again, try to go for the one with those attack offensive stats. In terms of special effect, it all honestly, I don't think it matters that much. I think all of them are pretty good. I don't think there's any which I wouldn't like. Maybe rebound because that's a bit more RNG based. Yes, you may be able to take out an enemy altogether, but that's so RNG based. I don't like that kind of RNG based scenarios. But pretty much all of the other ones, like HP recovery, invincibility, the offensive one where the enemy also take damage when they are hit by a skill, like they take their AoE damage. All of those are pretty nice, to be honest. So pick whatever you want. I think the main thing you want to concentrate on is more the fixed stats on your red magic gear. Or if you're lucky enough to actually go for a brilliant magic gear, then the best choice is going to be this one, Ultra Concentrated Ether. This is the best choice for any DPS, hands down. This one increases your crit damage and also your penetration. So both of the stats is give is offensive, so that's that's why quite is nice, quite nice. Sorry, and then also the skill base is also quite nice because you are also able to increase the Remember, when the skill hits, 10% chance to increase. So once again, this could happen before your eligible even land, so that's very nice. And also your own damage is going to be increased by a certain amount as well. So those are very, very nice. However, if you don't have access to this one, or for example, sorry, you want to use this on different DPS, because this pretty much is the best one on all DPS. If you do want to use this on different DPS, then the other good options are this one. For example, you can increase your crit hit. Personally, I actually think crit damage means more for Laxus than crit hit, and I'll kind of explain that why shortly. So that one increase crit hit, which is not bad. This one increase pure attack, so that's also not bad. This one have attack as well, so that's okay. This one have crit hit, so that's also okay. So those four are all okay. In fact, all of them are okay. This one is probably the best one. And then this one, which I purposely missed out, is the other one, which I think is very interesting. Personally, I think this is probably the worst magic gear out of all of the six, because first of all, control immunity to me, that's kind of just wasted. I have never seen control immunity become useful in any scenario. And then crit damage, for most characters, you prefer to focus on crit hit rather than crit damage, because what's good with 200% crit damage if you only have like a 5% chance of crit hit, right? So for most character, this magic gear is possibly one of the worst in the game. However, Laxus is one of the few that I actually think can make use of this magic gear, which is why if you do have to balance or juggle around your magic resource amongst multiple already built up characters, and you need someone to put on the swirl of time, then Laxus surprisingly is probably actually one of the best options out there. And the reason is he is one of the few characters who can actually really take advantage of crit damage, even with a really low crit rate. And the reason for this comes from two directions. One is if you actually take a look at his Ether Nano passive, I kind of mentioned this before, he actually have ability to buff up his own crit hit, so by 15%. So this by itself is already pretty rare. Not many characters are able to do that. I think the only two I know of is this one from Laxus or Garjo, who I think also have an Ether Nano passive. Is it this one? Which can enhance crit rate by 13%, right? So, and also up to 3 star. Also, actually, this one can increase by quite a lot. So yeah, so Garjo and Laxus are probably the only one I can think of that can really make use of the Swirl of Time from his own Ether Nano passive. And then the other reason why I think the Ether Nano passive, sorry, Swirl of Time is also going to be good for him, even though he may have naturally quite low crit hit rate. It's because if you have any PvP content in peak contests where you need to deploy all three characters at the same time, Laxus is normally paired up with Wendy, because basically if you take a look at Laxus' leadership skill, he increased attacking speed by 30% for the whole team. And then if you take a look at one of Wendy's strongest attack, is this one, where she basically changed off her basic attack to a stronger version of them, to this wind burst, which is quite nice. Now, the thing with this is that this only lasts for 5 seconds. So for many units, you can, let's say, assume you can only get one basic attack per second. So for many units, that basically means it's only going to be 5 hits because you only have 5 seconds, right? However, for Laxus, if you actually have Laxus in the leader and giving leadership buff to Wendy, what you actually find is that Winter can actually normally land 6 or 7 because there's no longer just 5 attacks in those 5 seconds. You're attacking much faster, and therefore you're actually doing more, something like 5 divided by 0.7. So that's actually more gonna be like 7 or maybe 8, depending on whether you are able to squeeze in. But yeah, it's gonna mean a lot more when you have that increased attacking speed. So that's kind of why a lot of people pair up Wendy with Laxus. And then if you look at other ability from Wendy, is this Wind Dash, which if you are actually able to trigger that, then you'll be 35% more likely to receive crit hit the enemy as well. Not just from Wendy, but just that enemy have that debuff. And that's actually going to be really nice, because now what you have is you have potentially Laxus with a 35% increased chance from Wendy's debuff, and then another 15% chance from his own ability. So that's an extra 50% increase in his crit hit rate straight away. And that's kind of why I think Laxus is one of the a few characters, he can really take advantage of crit damage, even if his crit hit rate is naturally quite low. So that's kind of why I think if you do have to juggle around multiple magic gear on different characters, it's not actually a bad shout to have something like Swirl of Time on Laxus, and so you can then free up this ultra concentrated ether on the different DPS. So that's kind of what I'm actually gonna recommend in terms of brilliant magic gear front. So yeah, so that's basically my thoughts on how you should be building Laxus as a character.